Okay, let's talk about some fantasy hockey sleepers for this upcoming year. Today I'm going to be doing the East Division, and there will be three other videos for the other division. I played fantasy hockey since 2012. I get very into it. Last year I finished 18-3 in my main league. I actually finished in second standings-wise because first place finished with an 18-3 record as well, but he had more points for than me. Tough one to swallow, but there wasn't a real playoff, so who's really counting that anyway? Let's get into it. So basically, sleepers are guys who I think are drafted later than they should be. I'm not going wicked off the board here with the 400 ranked player. I'm going if you are 50 spots below where I think you're going to finish, you're going to be in here. Or you're going to be in here if you're the most underrated guy on your team, in my opinion. East Division, we're going in order here. I think the Rangers are last, actually, because I misordered them by mistake. Let's just hop into it. Boston Bruins, Torrey Krug's replacement on the first power play unit. Now, the Bruins power play unit last year finished second in the league with percentage around 25%. And let me flip back my notes here. Basically, Matt Grzelcyk is getting the job. I think it's pretty clear that McAvoy is not the guy for that at the moment. They like Grzelcyk. He ran the second unit last year. I expect him to jump right into the first unit. He's a very safe player, which will work very well with David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand, who are more risk takers. You got Jake DeBrusk in front of the net, Patrice Bergeron playing a bumper role usually, and it's going to be a good power play unit, even with Pastrnak missing the first month of the year, which is a little bit of a red flag. But at the same time, you look at the ADP of Matt Grzelcyk, which is 167. But when you look at the ADP, he's only being drafted in 8% of leagues that have draft, which is kind of the thing here about ADP. You can't have an average draft position for a guy who is not drafted in a majority of leagues here, which means you'll probably be getting Matt Grzelcyk if you do select him with one of your last picks in the draft. And the ceiling's pretty high considering the power play unit he plays on. And I feel like this is a can't miss, because if you do miss, you just drop him for a guy who is not that much worse where you're picking Matt Grzelcyk. 21 points last year. That's going to be a point every other game, at least, if he's on that first power play unit. And that's my selection for the Boston Bruins, who don't have a lot of sleepers because they're a fairly known team with what they bring to the table. We then go to Buffalo, which this is slept on because I think this player is ranked about 50 spots too low. I think Victor Olofsson finishes top 50 this year. He's playing with two great playmakers in one of the best players in the league in Jack Eichel and a former MVP in Taylor Hall. And this kid's got one of the best shots in the league. And that's saying, I know that's a big statement for a guy who's played one season, but if you see him when he catches the puck right, there's not many people who can hit it like Victor Olofsson. 20 goals in 54 games last year. Very solid for a rookie. He's going to be first line, first power play unit. He missed 15 games last year with an injury, and that's why his points per game is not higher. He came back and had a bit of a slump after that. Also, the Sabres were miserable, so there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm in that locker room. I expect him to have a much solid year, and if he plays the whole year, expect him to be close to point per game with who he's playing with. We then move to New Jersey, and you're thinking Nico Hischier. You're thinking Jack Hughes. I'm thinking Nikita Gusev. Gusev is going to be on the first line, first power play, which is a big deal for me when looking at these guys who are going to overperform. I think he's a top 100 player this year. Mainly because of how he finished. It took him a bit to get adjusted to the game in the United States. The Russian rinks are wider. You got more room, and as a playmaker, that definitely makes a difference like it does for Gusev. The big issue for Gusev, though, when looking at him, is his line mates. Now, Nico Hischier is a solid player, but he's not looking like the superstar we were hoping he would be. And I say we. I'm not a New Jersey fan, so I shouldn't have said we, but just people in general thought Hischier was going to be better than he's been so far. Maybe he takes that step this year, and that would be big for him and Gusev's production fantasy-wise. Andreas Johnson's not a first-liner, but he's no slouch in the NHL. He's an okay player. But Nikita Gusev finished with 11 points in his last 10 games last year. Was really turning into a very good player in the league, and I expect him to finish top 100, and you guys should definitely scoop him up at his average draft position of 183.9. Only being drafted in 44% of leagues, but he should definitely be being drafted in all leagues. We then go to the Islanders. I almost went Brock Nelson, but I went for the moon here, and that's Anthony Bevellier, who has a much higher ceiling than him in my opinion. 23. This is a breakout candidate in my opinion. I really liked how he looked last season. I really loved how he looked in the playoffs last year as well. There's an open spot on that New York Islanders power play, and if this guy on the first power play unit beast, he's on the second, Right now they have 2 defensemen listed, which I think is just because they haven't updated it because they haven't gone to camp. I expect this guy to be on the first power play unit with Barzal, and that will only raise his profile. He could actually find his way into a first-line role as well, which would really raise his profile, and that's one of the reasons he doesn't even have an ADP because he's not being selected in enough leagues. But if he was to fall into those roles, you're looking like a genius in your draft if you get him in one of your last picks. Projected at 205. It really depends how deep your league is, too. If you got a lot of teams and you're drafting like 20 players or so, he's definitely going to be selected in your league, or should be. And I really think you guys should really consider picking him up because this guy has top 100 potential if he breaks out. And even if he doesn't, he's got a high floor. He finished at 168th in my league last year. So he's already performed better than his ADP this year. 18 goals, 21 goals in the last 3 years. Look at the games played. He was on his best pace last year. He's bagging 20 minimum, so the floor is high too. This is really can't miss pick and really a no-brainer if you're this late in your draft and you have Anthony Bevellier in front of you. We then move on to Philadelphia, and this really doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't be talking about this, but he is so lowly ranked. And there are not a lot of other good options for sleepers on this team, if I'm being honest with you. And I wanted to put like young guys, but when Yaakov Voraceks ranked at damn near 200, you got to talk about Yaakov Voraceks and how this guy is a point per game player if he's in the right situation. And he's on a line with Sean Couturier and Claude Giroux, which is a very capable line of putting up a point per game for him and Claude Giroux. I don't care if they're older; they're still uber talented. 163.7 ADP, and he's being drafted in every league. So every league has Yaakov Voraceks going around here. If you're in a categories league, I don't know how he's going to rank in your league, but in my league where it's based on points, assists, and you get point totals based on that, this is a no-brainer at 163.7. He's going to be a top 100 player. I guarantee it. I don't get this one, so let's move on to Pittsburgh, where we can talk about a guy who is a little bit more of a sleeper, Kasperi Kapanen, who is currently being drafted at 164.5, owned in 14% of leagues, and he's playing with Crosby, so that's dumb. He's playing with Gensel, who's a 40-goal player. In my opinion, Gensel and Olofsson are very similar to what they're going to do this year, and you've seen what Gensel's done in the past. Olofsson is very much of that mold, and Olofsson's playing with more talent than Gensel. But I need to get off Olofsson. I'm a little too high on him. But Kapanen playing with Crosby and Gensel is a no-brainer for him being drafted in general. And when he's going at 164.5, it's a no-brainer to take this guy a little bit earlier. You see what Brian Rust does with Malkin. You see what Jason Zucker did. You see what Pascal Dupuis did. You see what all these guys throughout the history do when they play with Crosby, and all their numbers go up. So even if this guy isn't a top 100 player, he's going to be well worth the draft pick in the late hundreds wherever you get Kasperi Kapanen. And there will be people who reach on him because people are very infatuated with looking at Kasperi Kapanen's speed and what the skill he can bring to the table. But at the same time, the inconsistency in his play in the past is going to make people a little hesitant. And I don't think it should, because this guy is going to be playing with Sidney Crosby, who gets the best out of his players. Expect Kapanen to bang 20 goals at least and probably around 50 points in 56 games if he stays with Crosby the whole year. I wish he was on the first power play unit, but he isn't. But I still expect his production to be through the roof, assuming his health and Crosby's health, which is a question mark. We move on to one of the most boring teams to talk about here, and that would be the Washington Capitals. I hope you didn't see that Rangers slide. If you did, you got a little preview of what I'm going to be talking about next. But you got TJ Oshie. This is another team like the Bruins. A lot of their commodities are known, so I'm going with a value pick here. TJ Oshie in my league finished top 100. He does everything, so I imagine he does well in category leagues as well. Finished 87th. He's being drafted this year. ADP 165.7, 165th. Pick on average. First power play, playing with OV, playing with Kuzi, playing with Backstrom. Playing with John Carlson. He's on a loaded unit. He gets a lot of tip-ins. He really gets in front of the net. Older, so maybe that's why he slipped down the board, but I still think he's got top 100 potential just because of the situation, how good the team is. I really think TJ Oshie is a very good value pick here, and he definitely should be going higher than 165th. Not the most exciting guy to talk about here because people want to talk about young players when you talk about the sleepers, but when you have an established guy like TJ Oshie this late in the draft, it's hard to miss. I was going to go with their goalie, but he's ranked like the 6th or 7th goalie, and I think that's a little high for my liking or for calling someone a sleeper, but he's got top 5 potential. Go for him if you want. That's the end screen. I'm all over the place. The New York Rangers, Alexis Lafreniere. I'm not going to speak too much on this, but he's playing with the guy who led the league in goals per game last year in Zibanejad. He's got a power forward in Kreider who creates space for his line mates. He's one of the most talented prospects we've seen in the last 10, 12 years or whatever. I think he's closer to the McKinnon and McDavid tier than he is the Heischer and Hughes tier. Where in between, I am not sure because we have not seen him play an NHL game, but sky's the limit for this kid. So if you're getting him at 130, you're taking a little bit of a risk here, but he could be a top 50 player. And there's not many guys ranked outside of the top 100 except for like him and Olsen, who I see as top 50 potential players who I think have a very good shot at being there. Now, I rather go Olsen than Lafreniere at their ADPs, but at the same time, Lafreniere's ceiling is very high, and you've seen what this kid's done at World Juniors. You've seen what he's done in the Q. He's a can't-miss prospect. It's just a matter of if his big production starts right away or if it's a little bit later to come. Okay, those are the sleepers I have. Those are players I am heavily considering at their ADPs and probably reaching on some of these guys in the draft. If you like my video, hit the thumbs up button. If you want to follow my channel for the future videos, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at PatSylviaNHL, and I'll see you in the next fantasy hockey video. Peace out.